Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your presence here tonight. Thank you for showing your support to the Palestinian cause and to the BDS movement. I definitely feel that I have grown on so many different levels from what I thought was the worst thing that had ever happened to me. I avoided speaking on the details of what actually transpired because of all the negativity surrounding it. But I think that tonight it's important for me to go back to what happened in order for you to understand just how far I've come. So I was out of the country for work, and I posted a picture of myself with DJ Black Coffee on my Instagram account. Someone then commented on the post, how could you post a picture of someone who'd made a decision to perform in Israel? Ignorant at the time to why this would be a problem, I looked up what Black Coffee had said in response to this and repeated his statement that he said that music should bring the world together. And if only in the infinite wisdom of the gods, I'd let it end there, but no. In my eagerness to defend someone I consider a friend, but with no actual knowledge of what is transpiring in Palestine, I decided to seek the advice of a Jewish friend who I thought to be knowledgeable on the subject. Looking back now, I know there's a difference between being knowledgeable on the issue and simply being opinionated. In my haste to respond to the attack on Black Coffee, I distractedly skimmed through the essay that was sent to me and proceeded to copy and paste with disastrous consequences. I think we all know what happened thereafter, a barrage of social media attacks, some very ugly crying from myself on social media. There were a couple of death threats, even more crying, loss of endorsements, loss of friends, 3 months of me being so depressed I couldn't get out of bed, and a whole lot of introspection. Surprising as it may seem, I'm now of the firm belief that what happened for a higher purpose. If it not for that experience, that very painful experience, I would not be here today speaking to all of you. What is important to getting to this place was making a sincere apology, as well as comprehending fully the implications of what I'd said. At that stage, I was still very ignorant in my knowledge of the Palestine-Israel conflict and desperately wanted to educate myself. So as soon as I got back from Ibiza, which is where I posted the photo of myself and DJ Black Coffee, I set up a meeting with Mohammed and Bashira from BDS. At the time, I didn't even know what the acronym BDS stood for. I was just told by a friend that that would be the right place to seek counsel. After a 2.5-hour meeting, we decided that it would undertake and pay for a fact-finding mission to Palestine, overseen by the South African Council of Churches and SA Jews for a Free Palestine, which would be announced at a press conference with BDS the next day. I remember asking Mohammed and Bashira, are you sure there ain't going to be any media there? I mean, who would want to actually show up at a press conference to me saying I'm going to Palestine and Israel? Reflecting back now, it was only in that moment of walking into a press room packed with journalists and TV cameras that I fully comprehend and understand the magnitude of the situation. As the news of the press conference broke, I started being approached by concerned members of the Jewish community. Initially, the calls were out of concern because, according to them, Mohammed was a known anti-Semite and BDS was a violent terrorist organization. I was bombarded with propaganda against BDS, including having documents and packages dropped off at my home by pro-Israel groups. When I made it clear that I would not be calling off the press conference, the friendly concerns became all-out explicit threats. I was told, for example, that whilst a Palestinian would threaten, an Israeli will come straight to slit my throat. No warning. When this did not work, I was offered by someone who supports Israel remuneration for the loss of income, which was estimated at 1.5 million. I was told this would be paid in 12 installments over the period of the next year. Some have asked me why or how I could say no to such an offer, but the choice itself became very easy. I realized that something was very wrong, because why else was I essentially being bribed into silence? I didn't know how important my opinion was. I now know that even the smallest voices can make a difference in the struggle for justice for all people. In the weeks leading up to the trip, I did as much research as I could. I didn't sleep. I met with people from both sides to make sure I had a well-rounded perspective of what was happening and not based on opinion. I have to be honest, My opinions with some of those who support Israel and groups that advance the Israeli narrative left me feeling manipulated. I was constantly questioned about my dates of travel and full itinerary and was made fearful about entering the region. The full extent of this manipulation was illustrated by a meeting that I was called into by the Israeli embassy under the guise of discussing the meeting and giving me a different point of view whilst I was in Israel. When I got to this meeting, which I can only describe as hostile, I was told in no uncertain terms that I would not be allowed into Israel. When I inquired why, they said under new Israeli legislation, anyone who seeks to harm the sovereign state of Israel will be banned access. It is still shocking to me that a pursuit of knowledge would attract the label of terrorist or threat. What is clear now is that any person who even potentially has a different opinion to that of the state of Israel is seen as a threat. My final question to them was, would I still be allowed into Palestine? I was then told a blatant lie by the Israeli embassy. They said that that would be up to Palestine. What I now know is that Palestinians don't have control of who can enter their country, and Israel has a complete military occupation of all Palestinian borders. Can I have some water, please? Wine, love.
Thank you.
So I've got a lot more to say. I hope you're not bored yet. I left South Africa on the 23rd of July and headed for Jordan. In Amman, I had the opportunity of visiting one of the many refugee camps and was alarmed to discover that 60% of Jordan's population consists of Palestinian refugees. Palestinians form the largest refugee population in the world today. Close to 6 million Palestinians live in these camps and are unable to return to their homes. They've lived there for the last 70 years in constant separation from their loved ones and family members. As some of you know, these refugees camps came about as the result of the conflicts between 1946 and 1948, and then again in the aftermath of the hostilities of 1967 and the Israeli occupation of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. Camps were set up to temporarily accommodate those displaced. Despite how long they've lived in these camps as refugees outside of Palestine, one of the things that shocked me the most is that people aren't able to get local identity numbers, meaning they're unable to seek gainful employment, the majority of which are forced to rely on charity from organizations such as UNRWA, which is the United Nations Relief and Works Fund. Due to recent drastic funding cuts from America, UNRWA now more than ever needs help. One of the things that I witnessed personally while I was there, as a result of the budget cuts, along with the lack of basic services in general, is things such as refuse removal being severely affected. This has the potential for serious health implications, with a very real chance of spread of disease, considering the confined spaces within which the refugees are forced to live. The dignity of people can largely be affected by the surroundings they find themselves in. I feel this is somewhere that we can actually all make a difference. If my incident can teach us anything, it's the strength of a community united. So can you imagine if all of those people who posted on my Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, and trust me, there were thousands, actually pledged money, even a little bit, the small amount, what a meaningful change can be affected. One of the camps that I visited was the Jerash Gaza camp. And here I learned the power of the Palestinian spirit is a wonderful thing. Their suffering has not eroded their love and hospitality to strangers like me, which is an indescribable strength of the Palestinian people. After I had a very emotional day, I was privileged enough to have dinner with a group of Jordanian BDS and Palestinian activists to hear their personal stories. It's so easy to get caught up in labels which are used to vilify individuals. Professionals such as doctors, authors, accountants, lawyers, and even organizations have been labeled threats to Israel because they engage in activism. I've come to know them as wonderful souls driven by truth and justice. The next part of my journey entailed traveling to the Allenby Bridge border, where one would cross over from Jordan to Palestine. There were 6 of us traveling in the group, 2 journalists from ENCA, a photographic journalist, Leroy, who sits in front of me, my mum, hi mum, and myself. I won't go into too much of the details, but it was clear from the onset that I'd already been flagged. After my passport was taken, I was pulled out of the queue and offered a cold drink, which I found really strange because it was almost an act. The rest of the interrogation became increasingly hostile. I was interrogated for 2 hours. The questioning was repetitive and very aggressive, and when I was literally in tears, it ended in me being given a big red stamp declaring my decade-long ban. I've often been asked about my ban and how I feel about it. Honestly, I wear it as a badge of honor. I now join the likes of people like Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who was also denied entry. He understood that Palestine was and is such an important issue for South Africa because it's about basic human rights, which we as South Africans hold close to our hearts. But I think the real question everyone wants answered is, what have I really learned from all of this? This journey has taught me that it doesn't matter if you're pro-Palestine or pro-Israel. That is not the point. We're all people, people with ties to each other, with love we wish to share. I think we need to find empathy and compassion to see not Palestinians or Israelis, Jews or Muslims, or whatever label we wish to differentiate ourselves, but people, mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters. My reputation, livelihood, and existence can be disparaged or threatened. However, my intentions have and always will come from a place of honesty. I do regret what I said in ignorance, but now I have the ability to speak my truth with a clear conscience. It is clear to me now that dialogue needs to happen in order to invoke meaningful change. No solution can ever come from a place of aggression. We need to come to the table with love, because hate beckons hate. And love beckons love. Thank you.